Hey, are you an adult English language learner who sometimes says, hell yeah, let's learn some English? Well, then you're in the right place. This is EF'nL, hell yeah, English podcast with me, Mr. Don. And if you want to study English the way it's spoken in the real world by folks just like me, then come on and join us. Have some fun, learn some English for the next half hour. This lesson is especially for you. And if you like things like rock and roll, movies filled with lots of action and mayhem, wacky words, and increasing your vocabulary, then you are especially in the right place. And this is episode 3, and I try to upload once a week. Tell your friends. Okay, let's get started.
Hey. All right. This is the first segment I like to call chit chat or small talk. And you may have noticed that the video quality is not as high as the last couple episodes. That is because I am in Thailand, not at my apartment in Hanoi, Vietnam. Um, doing a visa run, if you know what that is. That is when you leave the country in order to get a brand new visa issued to you. And this is something that a lot of you are familiar with, maybe some of you not so much. So let's just chat about visas for a few minutes here. Um, have you ever had a visa for another country? If so, what kind of visa? Student visa, tourist visa, work visa? I think I've had them all. Mostly work visas as an English teacher. Some countries are a lot easier than others. What countries for you have been the easiest to get visas for? And you may have noticed that visas across the board, and I mean, when I say across the board, I mean across the whole world, in all cases, in all countries. I think they've gotten more difficult over the last decade. Why? Um, it's crazy to me. I mean, I'm here in Thailand, as I said, and I'll be going back to Vietnam shortly because I did get my visa. Woo, yay! Um, but visas can be stressful, and so I was a little bit stressed about it. Have you been stressed about a visa? Have you ever known anyone to accidentally overstay a visa? Yeah, stay longer than the limit. Um, that's pretty common. A lot of people do that with student visas, or they're trying to change it, but they don't bother. They don't take care of it in time. Countries are becoming less and less lenient. They're not as nice as they used to be. I ran into that recently a few months back when I was in Indonesia. I overstayed actually by 2 days because of the way they count. I arrived at like 11:50, I don't know, p.m. A few minutes before midnight is when I arrived. But that counted as a full day. And then, of course, the morning I was leaving counted as a full day. So I actually had to, yeah, go to the immigration office out out of the line when I was exiting, trying to exit the country. And they were nice, and I chatted with them in Bahasa, in Indonesian, and I had to leave the passport and go all the way through the airport without one to the arrival, of course, the arrival area of the airport to an ATM to get money to pay my fine. And then, so I don't know what problems you've run into, but that's the small chat, the chit chat chatter for today is about visas. All right, this is the freaking fun phrase of the week. Now, some of you might be asking yourselves, what is the difference exactly between a saying, an idiom, a proverb, an adage? And this is why I just said freaking fun phrase. A phrase gives me lots of different options. A saying is the broadest term next to a phrase. Um, a saying can be an idiom, a proverb, or an adage. Okay, anything that people say basically makes sense. An idiom is something, as you know, we had last week, don't count your chickens before they hatch, or a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So if you take the parts of that sentence, they make no sense whatsoever. The meaning is entirely different than the parts that make it up. Okay, that is an idiom. And most of you are familiar with idioms. Some of you study them for various tests still today, unfortunately. A proverb. Proverb is a saying that's been around. It tries to give you some kind of advice. It's a piece of advice, and we measure advice in pieces. So, a piece of advice. All right. An adage is very similar to a proverb, and the only difference, if you try to look these up, is going to be that an adage is it tries to convey some kind of wisdom that's been around for longer or forever, versus a proverb, which is just a piece of advice. But in actuality, practically, they mean the same thing, and you don't need to worry about the difference between proverb and adage. Most writers and other people just pretty much use them interchangeably. Okay, this week's fun phrase is the blind leading the blind. And you saw that from the brief intro with a string of blind people leading each other off a cliff, I believe. Um, the phrase often starts out with the words, it's like. Man, it's like the blind leading the blind. Now, let me give you a solid, concrete example of that. So, you've got a computer problem. You're not very good with computers. You're not an IT guy. You're not an IT nerd, but you're going to help your sister out with a computer problem she's having. All right. And your brother or mom might come in and say, and watch you as you struggle trying to fix the problem, and you're not really fixing it. You're not helping her very much because what do you know? And your dad or mom comes in and says, man, it's like the blind leading the blind. Or you might say that yourself. You might, after 10 minutes, 15 minutes of trying to solve the problem, you might say, I don't know. It's like the blind leading the blind here. Okay? Admitting defeat. A blind person leading another blind person. Neither one of them can see. You have no idea how to solve the problem. So when someone tries to help another person and neither one is skilled or neither one knows how to solve the problem, that is a case of the blind leading the blind. And that's a very fun phrase. Okay. This week's Spotlight on Music is on the band ZZ Top. A little piece, a little icon, very iconic band, piece of Americana. And by iconic, I mean everybody recognizes them when they see them. As if you see their icon, you'll know who they are. All right. These are the members. If I want to read this on Wikipedia or on Google search, rather, yeah, it's a rock band. They were formed in the 70s. Okay, sorry, right before that. They really came of age in the 70s in Texas. They are from Texas. And they're pretty much done now because their bassist vocalist, Dusty Hill, um, died in 2021, about 5 years ago.
Okay, let's look at one of ZZ Top's most famous videos from the 1980s, and that is Legs. Okay. And as you saw, a lot of iconic things about the 80s. You noticed their long beards and the sound, just rather unique, a very distinct sound. As soon as you hear a song by ZZ Top, you know immediately who it is. And how did they get that iconic sound? Well, yeah, they cranked up the volume, the amplification, the reverb on the guitars. You can hear all that. It's wonderful. And some of the video you also saw a very typical strip mall from Texas. And that is with all the little stores all together. They're not connected inside like a mall. And that's called a strip mall. There are a lot of them in Texas. And you saw the really rad, cool car that they've got. Beautiful. And the beautiful women you may have noticed. Yes, tall Texas women from the 1980s. Although realistically, a lot of women from Texas have always been short with brown skin because there are a lot of Latina Americans living in Texas as well. But these were the blonde, tall, blue-eyed variety of Texas gals. Okay, that is Legs. ZZ Top is an awesome band. They also, because of the blue sound, have played a lot of live gigs with various blues artists, including John Lee Hooker, Boom, 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 Boom. You might want to check that out. All right.
All right, this week's book to beg, borrow, buy, or steal is the Poisonwood Bible. Really famous. I first was introduced to it as an English teacher working in Japan. I think it's got a fairly wide following among expats and travelers and backpackers and teachers and that sort of thing. It's a few years old now. If you'll look here, the Poisonwood Bible, it's about a missionary family. They come from Georgia in the southern or southeastern U.S., set in 1959 in the Congo. And the Belgian Congo has a really interesting history around this time. So this is a missionary family, and the father is a zealous or dedicated preacher who wants to change the world, change Africa, win hearts and minds. And in the end, Africa actually changes them and the family more than they change the people in Africa. It's got a really interesting storyline. Let me just look at some of you can see all the stars here. Grab me. Okay. Here we go. Gives a little bit of the plot. They set off to change Africa only to have Africa change them, as I said. The husband becomes more entrenched Okay, in his mindset, he is stubborn. He wants to continue to change Africa, while the wife decides what to do with the family, how long they're going to stay. And then they have several daughters, and there is someone from the CIA also involved in the Congo there. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the plot, but it's a great book. So hope you'll check that out. All right, just one more thing to mention about readers. Most of you use a reader like me. I've been using Kindle for a long time. I used to have Kobo. It's really good. I just did a search here on the, foreign language translation. If you are reading an English book that's above your level, but you feel like you're interested in it and you want to translate it, you got lots of options. So if you do a search, Kobo is really good. I think especially for, what should I say? You've got some videos on how it lets you annotate and create notebooks for language learning. You might check out those features. I know on my Kindle, when I just scroll down, if I highlight a paragraph, for example, and I scroll down, I'm going to get first. Hang on, let me grab my Kindle. So I'll get Wikipedia first, and then dictionary, and then Wikipedia, and then translation, direct to Google Translation, English to whatever language. It's pretty easy these days on most devices to do that. All right, this week's movie mayhem, or perhaps more appropriately, mayhem-filled movie of the week is No Country for Old Men. Let's take a look at the trailer.
Let me ask you something. What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss?
Well, look, I need to know what I stand to win.
Everything. Just call it friendo.
All right, a coin toss. As you might have already guessed, that is the bad guy. And he is a bad dude, an evil dude. You don't want any of him, that's for sure. A coin toss, and as you probably know, just like rock, scissors, paper, or other games, it's a way of deciding what's going to happen, or deciding who wins something usually. You are all familiar with a coin toss.
Willin, what's in the satchel?
It's full of money.
Yes, what's that in the satchel? With a Texas accent. Satchel, just a kind of bag.
He's just a guy who happened to find that money.
I got a bad feeling, Llewellyn.
Well, it's a mess, ain't it, Sheriff?
If it ain't, it'll do till the mess gets here.
That's the sheriff, played by Tommy Lee Jones, famous actor. And the guy on the horse would be the deputy sheriff in English. A lot of rural counties and areas in the U.S. have sheriffs, and they are elected to office, by the way.
I'm looking for Llewellyn Moss.
Notice the guy's name is Llewellyn, okay? Not a typical name, just to let you know.
You go up to his trailer.
Yes.
Do you want to leave a message?
Yes.
I don't come back until...
Notice the Coen brothers are the ones, they're famous. They have produced a lot of movies, always famous for their banter or interesting dialogue.
Mother, I love her.
Your mother's dead.
Well, then I'll tell her myself. Got a loose cannon here.
You think this boy Moss has got any notion of the sorts that are hunting him?
Okay, loose cannon, a couple terms. Loose cannon is someone who's gone off the reservation, who's unpredictable. We don't know what they're going to do. They could do crazy things. They're crazy. And then the deputy sheriff asked if the sheriff thought the guy who's being tracked had any notion of the sorts of people, any notion, any idea about the kind of guy who's after him.
He's seen the same things I've seen, and it certainly made an impression on me.
He ought to. He oughta. Or he should, okay?
Just how dangerous is it?
Compared to what? The bubonic plague?
The crime you see now, it's hard to even take its measure. It's just all out war.
You can't stop what's coming.
Is this guy supposed to be the ultimate badass?
He asked from his hospital bed, who's this guy supposed to be, the ultimate badass? You know, like the ultimate fighter. You notice that the other cowboy, Woody Harrelson, compared him to the bubonic plague earlier. So, yeah, pretty bad.
You don't understand.
Call it. Call it.
When you flip a coin, that's what you say to the other person. Call it. Heads or tails, which one? Okay, it's showing. Wow. Yeah, just another film filled with badassery and lots of mayhem for you to check out. It was shot on location in West Texas, so it's very accurate. All the scenery you see is real, and that's what West Texas looks like. All right, great story. Have fun with it.
All right. Rice cooker recipe of the week. Let's just see what I've got in this bag of goods. Bag of ingredients. Now, first of all, you'll take a look at these images. And of course, this is mac and cheese. Previously, we talked about chili and how you can combine these to make chili mac. Notice I'm going to say something right off. Some of this macaroni and cheese and a lot of it that I've eaten in Asia, they just use the wrong kind of cheese for an American or for a North American. You know, what we're used to is actually the box. And I'll just show you that real quick. We all grew up, there we go, eating Kraft mac and cheese. Or I think in Canada, actually they just still call it Kraft dinner. So this is what it looked like. And the boxes you can see here. Notice that it is, I don't want to go to Shopee. All right. It's a very yellow orange cheese. It's cheddar. All right. That's what we like. And when you see some of this other mac and cheese that's kind of a pasty white because they use mozzarella and other types of cheeses, it's just, man, doesn't taste right to an American. Just saying. Now that's entirely up to you. You may not like cheddar. For me, I like a nice medium or even sharp cheddar, which is what you get with the cheese powder inside the Kraft mac and cheese dinners. All right, here is the bag of ingredients. Now, you might say, why would you have that? Yeah, this is bulgogion cheese. So I'm going to rip this open in a second, and you're going to see why I have that. Of course, macaroni. This is what I found at the local grocery store here in Vietnam. This is not macaroni. This is spiral pasta, we would call it. In American English, even in Italian, it's not macaroni, but it's close. And you just got to make do with what you've got. Butter, some milk, and cheese. Now, preferably use real cheese and a cheddar, in my opinion, as I've said. But, you know, I've got some cheddar processed cheese slices that will do the trick. Okay, we're going to do this in a two-step process. And that means you're going to throw the macaroni or pasta and into the rice cooker with some water and salt and maybe a little butter, and that's it. And press cook, and then when it pops up and is finished, at that point, you're going to open it, and stage 2 is to add the milk, some more butter. Man, everything is better with butter. If you're wondering why Western pastries are so good, or baked goods in general, it's because we add lots of butter. That's the secret. Okay, and I'm going to rip this open. Rip. Good quality ramen here, which I'll use later. But I am after this. This is a cheese packet, cheese powder that's exactly the same as what you would find in the Kraft mac and cheese boxes, okay, that we all know and love as Americans. All right, I'm going to pop all that into the rice cooker, and then I'll show you the results in a minute. The results of rice cooker recipe. Wow, you can see that. Now, let's just go ahead and taste it. Not bad. It's pretty good, actually. It's not perfect. And to be honest, I don't know if I had to choose between a Kraft mac and cheese dinner or this 50-50, but it is pretty good. And oh, sorry, a lot of you probably noticed the color. So here I complained about the white pasty color on a lot of mac cheese. And even though I used an orange cheddar powder and cheddar slices that were colored orange, it turned out, ironically or appropriately or kind of funny, that it turned out to be more of a whitish color. And I think that's because the milk and the butter was also a whitish color. But it tastes good. It tastes like cheddar. So a pretty good mac and cheese.
Okay, the wacky word of the week is reservation. So let me go through this. It has several different definitions, which is why it qualifies as whacked. So the one you're most familiar with is probably, do you have a reservation when you go to a hotel, want to check in? Do you have a booking? Have you reserved a room? Have you booked a room? Did you make a reservation? Second definition, though, is to have some concerns. All right. You're not sure about something. I have some reservations, and it's almost always plural with the S. Notice that. About our plan. I'm not really sure it's going to work. Okay, I have my doubts. Same as doubts about something. And then in America, another very common definition or meaning is Native American or Indian reservation, which is a plot of land that was given to the tribe by the federal government in the past. Okay, and it still is under federal jurisdiction until this day. It's not under the jurisdiction of the state. Okay, so there are a lot of Indian reservations in the western US where I grew up. Okay, and I had a couple of friends who grew up on the res, and that's the slang for that. So until the age of 16, I grew up on the res, means the reservation. Okay, whatever the local native tribal piece of land or reservation is. In the past, they were often associated with poor areas. Some still are, and some are not. Some have done quite well for themselves. All right, you can search and find out more about that if you're interested. And then finally, I didn't know this. My goodness, man. In the UK, evidently, the strip of land that separates, I'm going to say, a divided highway, or motorway, I think they call it there. In the US, we call that the median. Okay, the median strip, sometimes people might say. Evidently, that is also known as reservation in the UK. Let me know if I'm wrong.
All right, everybody, can you tell me what is taking place in this pic that you see in the background? There are two different images. I'd like you to try and make a single sentence using two of the definitions of the word reservation. Tick tock, tick tock. Okay. If you said something similar to, the man has a reservation or made a reservation at a hotel / casino on a reservation. The man has a reservation on a reservation. You were correct. Congratulations. And that is the whacked word of the week.